Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good week last week, good weekend. Hope you're looking forward to a good week as well. A couple of weird technical problems here has meant a slightly delayed start to this and no LinkedIn stream this week, I'm afraid. I've no idea why. Something about the network, I don't know, like there's some problem with streaming. I don't know, like now is not the time to try and debug it. Maybe later today I'll figure out what on earth is going on, but we're here and there's things to talk about, even though we are kind of into the silly season a little bit. We're into back end of July into August. Microsoft tend to mostly take off in August, to be honest, and then kind of reconvene in September. So, but there are still things happening. There are still things to talk about, which is good. So let's go to the first thing, which is actually not something I know an awful lot about, but I'm kind of very pleased that it exists. And that is a PHP wrapper for Microsoft Graph. Now, there's been a couple of different versions of this, and now there's a new RC19 version of the SDK for PHP for Microsoft Graph. Now, this actually came out of some work that happened a little while ago called Kyoto, which is something Microsoft developed and which you can go and get yourself. It's completely open source, which wraps around the Graph endpoints, the REST API endpoints, and then automatically generates SDK code for a variety of different languages, which is a really good idea because if you're Microsoft and let's say you're looking after Graph, obviously, Graph is evolving. Those API endpoints are being added to all the time. And you have to maintain the C#, the JavaScript, the PHP, the Python, the Ruby, the whatever else it is, that they provide SDK wrappers for. So this is like a big piece of work. So Kyoto is an attempt to automate some of that. And that's something that can be useful for anybody who has an API that wants to have nice SDK libraries around it. So just as an aside, if that sounds interesting, go and check out Kyoto as a Microsoft project you can get involved in, or you just steal the code from and use for yourself. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is, there's an updated version for PHP, which is kind of cool. So there's a whole blog post about it. I'm not a particularly heavy PHP user, so this doesn't mean an awful lot to me, but it looks like... it looks good, and I mean RC19, they've been pretty busy. So there's been a whole bunch of things. They did an RC5 a while ago, and there's a whole bunch of improvements now. So if you are using this wrapper, basically there's an updated version. You should go check it out. There's some cool new features. I like some of the syntax around retrying, which kind of makes working with Graph and working with any REST API kind of nicer. Handling things like retries for you, handling things like large file uploads. It's nice. So just a kind of quick one about that, because if you use it, you'll care about it. If you don't, I mean, the bigger story here in a way is the fact that Kyoto continues to be used and continues to kind of evolve, which is kind of exciting by itself, but it enables some of these other things to happen, which is cool. All right. It wouldn't be a weekly update without talking about the Microsoft 365 Developer Proxy, it seems. There is another version out now at 0.10. They're getting perilously close to V1ing, although maybe they're just going to keep adding new features and just upping the preview version. So we have a new one now. It's got some support in it for batching. This is kind of really interesting. Batching is a feature of Microsoft Graph. It's not, I would say, a massively heavily used feature, but it should be. I think people don't use it because they don't understand it and it's a bit too much effort to figure it out, but also it's got its own quirks and it's got its own kind of weirdnesses. So putting it into the proxy, I think, will be really helpful because it will help developers code around some of those. So this version includes support for batching. And what does that mean? It means adding it to how it works out minimum permissions. So looking inside batch requests and figuring out those calls for minimum permissions. And it also includes the kind of random error stuff, including that as batches as well, because that is entirely something that could happen. You could have a batch of 5 requests and one of them could be bad. What happens to the whole batch? How do you deal with that? Do you properly iterate through, or do you assume that because the whole batch succeeded, everything inside the batch succeeded? There's a whole bunch of stuff in that. So it's good to see it in the proxy because it will kind of, if developers are using the proxy as part of their development and test flows, and in part of, in their testing, then they will see some of these random kind of chaotic errors that occur out of the using batching, and they'll fix them, and that's all good. So there's more stuff coming as well. They're going to carry on working on it, more stuff with batching. But yeah, like I've talked about this before. If you use the proxy, there's a new version. Go check it out. It's kind of marching on. It's good to see this stuff carries on, and they keep adding features and iterating on it, which is really nice to see. All right, there's a few odd things I just want to call out this week. Like I say, there's not loads of new announcements and loads of new news, but there is some interesting stuff that's hit the roadmap. The first of these sounds way more interesting than it is, which is the Unified Fun Picker. What is this? So this is in development at the moment, and this is for Microsoft Teams. And this is, by the sound of it, going to lump together emojis, GIFs, and stickers into one combined picker, which sort of on the face of it makes sense. And you might also be thinking, why are you talking about this when we're supposed to be talking about development things? The reason I thought this was kind of worth talking about is what it's going to do. If you think about the compose menu, and how you write messages in Teams, and where you can put your message extensions in Teams, they all have like a first-party place underneath the compose. Along in the same row, you've got things like you've got emojis, you've got GIFs, you've got the first-party stickers, and then you've got your own stuff, your own messaging extensions, which you can add into that. It sounds like that kind of choice is too much for users, and so Microsoft either, and I don't know the reason for this because they haven't said the reason, they want to combine it into one big picker that most people go to most of the time, which has got all of the emojis, all of the GIFs, and all of the stickers in one place. Now, that could be because people are finding it too confusing to see what they need. It could be because people aren't using a lot of those things, and Microsoft think it's because they can't find them, or they want to make them more visible and get more people using them. That's possible as well. I'm not sure how I feel about this, because I feel like in some respects it reduces the visibility of third-party developers when they have messaging extensions. So for instance, if I was to write a messaging extension that for a whole bunch of custom stickers that I made for Thought Stuff, let's say, so you could add custom Thought Stuff stickers to your messages, which would be kind of fun, but there's no way I have time to do that. But let's say I did that. I don't think I could get that into this combined picker. So this combined picker is always going to have slightly rarefied items in it that are the blessed ones. But I worry that this is going to be where users just end up going all of the time and they never look to the other messaging extensions. That said, if Microsoft's feedback is that is too confusing and users need an easier path, then I guess I'm all for this. It would be nice to see some kind of way of managing that. So you could choose to put stuff in the combined picker if you thought it was useful to your life. That could be interesting. So you've kind of got like a most used section or something like that, rather than it being hard coded. But I think we'll have to just wait and see how that shakes out. Anyway, this is something that is rolling out in August. It's in development. It says rollout start in August, so I'm not really sure what that means. And I guess it's not very much work for them to do. So perhaps they're just going to do it in one sprint and roll it straight out. So we'll see. Also in the roadmap that we have definitely talked about before is export API support for Teams control messages. Now, I did talk about this on a previous weekly update and what this means. It just means that when you're using the export API, which allows you to in kind of bulk export a whole bunch of information about Teams messages, you're also going to get information about users joining and leaving chats. So rather than just the content, like the messages they sent, you're going to get that information about them being added and removed to a chat. We talked about that a while back when it was in development. It is now fully launched, and it's in launch status. And it says the rollout start was June. It's last modified on the 11th of July. So I think probably it's in most tenants by now. So you should expect to see that in the export data if you're using the export API. So that's all exciting. That's done as a feature. We've gone from kind of thinking about it to talking about it to doing it to it being done. All right, and finally, one more thing I want to leave you with is just a little bit of reading. And It's a piece by Judson Althoff. He's an executive VP, chief commercial officer at Microsoft, and he has a blog post, and no surprise, it's all about AI. I think all the blog posts now have to be about AI, and that's how it works. But this one, in fact, as I say that, it's interesting, like just looking down Microsoft's kind of related blogs and recent blogs, everything has the word AI in it. But this is an interesting roundup of how Microsoft's customers are using AI today. So you might find it interesting to read through. You might want to use it for justification for something. You might just want to take the stats from it, or you might just want to read it. And so that's cool too. So there's lots of customer call outs. There's lots of logo names in here. And then there are some also, Justin's done a video as well. But there is also a whole bunch of like real examples from real companies doing some interesting things. So maybe you're after case studies as well, or just like examples. This photo kind of makes me laugh because I don't know, everything in there looks like it's made by Microsoft. So like the cynical part of me thinks that looks like it might be a Microsoft office, but apparently it's a partner office and they're making plugins. So that's interesting. It's interesting to know actually that the partners are making plugins for Microsoft 365 Copilot. That currently is not a public preview thing at the moment. So it's interesting to know that it's happening somewhere. It's good that it's happening somewhere because it means when Copilot does launch, there'll be a bunch of third-party providers ready to go. Frustrating that we can't all get in on it. I do have things though that developers can do. This is a great segue that I hadn't planned, but I'm going to go with it. I do have actual actions that developers can do today to get ready for Microsoft 365 Copilot, as well as things organizations should be doing to get ready for Microsoft 365 Copilot. That is a blog post that I'm putting live in about an hour's time. So definitely jump on that. By the time you watch this, it's probably going to be live, so you can find it at my blog, blog.thoughtstuff.co.uk. Yeah, so there's definitely things developers can be doing now to be writing plugins, but there is no opening up officially of the Microsoft 365 plugin catalog or library or whatever it's going to look like. All right, that's everything I want to talk about this week. Like I say, kind of a light week, and it's going to be like that for a couple of weeks, I think, because of everything that's going on. But that's okay. It gives us a chance to regroup, and I'm sure Microsoft will be back in force in September. And it'll be interesting to see the timelines for Copilot, because we don't really have those at the moment. We're looking towards the end of the year. We've got things like Ignite coming up. We had Inspire. There wasn't, we had some announcements over Copilot. I think we had pricing at Inspire, didn't we? I can't really remember now. But we haven't really heard that much about availability or rollout. So it'll be interesting to kind of see when that stuff comes. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. But meanwhile, there's plenty of other things happening in the Microsoft 365 developer space. It's not all about Copilot and AI, even though sometimes it feels like it. Interesting. All right, that's everything from me. I'm going to let you get on with your day. Have a great one, whatever it is you're doing, and I'll speak to you again next time.